Live from the BDN Studios, it's Bang and Dang.
That's awesome.
If you don't like that, then
You ain't black.
Welcome back to Battles of American Civil War Behind the Battles. Bringing it back, some more Confederate allies. This time we're doing a Jubal Early episode.
hell, no Jubal Early.
Which, this is one of the only guys after the war, well, after Lee surrendered, he said, let's keep going.
Right.
And tried to assemble his own troops, and we know how that worked out, but, yeah, Jubal Early, he was the closest to get to Washington. If you guys remember that whole fiasco.
He probably could have got to it if he did it right.
Well, we already know there's a war of not doing things right, so.
Right.
He was also a Second Seminole War veteran and a Mexican-American War veteran. And he
was a lawyer?
He was a lawyer. Yeah, I'm a lawyer. And, yeah, never had his own division or his own corps.
Well, he
was served under Jackson and Ewell for the majority of his time.
He was a cavalry, wasn't he?
He commanded a division, but that's about it. Mm-hmm. He, November 3rd, 1816, he was born in a place called Red Valley, which is tucked inside Franklin County, Virginia. That's where he was born.
All right.
That's where old Jubal Anderson Early, he was third out of 10 children born. His parents were Ruth Hairston Early, born in 1794. She died in 1832.
Oh, before the war.
Oh, wow.
Good for her.
And Job Early, born in 1791. He lived all the way up till 1870.
Damn, 99. Holy shit.
I don't know about that, but.
Or 89. Damn.
No.
1870. Oh, sorry. Me so sorry. 79. Still pretty damn good. Yeah. Take a look at the Early family. Well, it wasn't just any family. They were what you call well-connected. Either directly one of Virginia's first families, or at the least linked through them through marriage, as the clan moved westward from Eastern Shore out toward the Blue Ridge Mountains. Their roots ran deep. Let's go back a little bit. Jubal's great-grandfather, he was Colonel Jeremiah Early. He was born in 1730. He lived in Bedford County, Virginia. He teamed up with his son-in-law, Colonel James Calloway. They did that to buy an iron furnace in Rocky Mount.
Nice.
What would eventually become Franklin County. Fortunately, Jeremiah didn't live long after that purchase. He died in 1779. At least he got to see America. Somewhat.
Not really.
No. But in his will, he left the furnace to 3 of his sons, Joseph, John, and another Jubal Early, the grandfather of our Jubal.
Our Jubal. Now, here's where the family fortune split, though. Of those 3 brothers, only John, who lived from 1773 to 1833, he's the only one that really prospered. He ended up selling his share in the iron furnace and bought himself a plantation in Albemarle County from his father-in-law.
Okay.
And here's a fun fact. The town of Earlysville, Virginia, still carries his name to this day.
Fuck yeah.
Wow.
Meanwhile.
Oh, yeah, he was like, frick this iron furnace business. I'm going to buy a plantation, boy.
Yep, that's where the money's at for now. Meanwhile, Jubal Early, that our Jubal was named after, his granddaddy. He didn't live long past his own marriage. He died young, leaving behind 2 little boys, Job, who was Jubal's daddy, and Henry, who was Jubal's uncle. Because their father had died, the boys were taken in as wards of Colonel Samuel Hairston, who just happened to be a towering figure in southwest Virginia. Hairston was born in 1788, and he lived all the way to the ripe old year of 1875. By 1851, he had a rep. He was a reputation as the richest man in the entire South, with a fortune of about $5 million. That's roughly $146 million today. And most of it came from vast amounts of land and enslaved labor. 146 ain't nothing. That's LeBron James. LeBron James.
Yeah.
That's a bench rider in the NBA.
I don't think that would be even the richest in the South back then either. So.
Right. No way.
Well, Job Early, he married into the Hairston family. He married his mentor's daughter and followed it. Oh, there you go, bud. Get in. Triple H that shit.
Right.
And he followed a path that combined politics, law enforcement, and plantation life.
Fair, great.
He served part-time in Virginia's House of Delegates between 1824 and 26. He even took on the role of county sheriff, commanded the local militia, and he managed an enormous 4,000-acre tobacco plantation. That's where the real money was.
Yeah.
That plantation was worked entirely by, you guessed it, slaves.
I mean, what are you going to do? Job's eldest son, Samuel Henry Early, born 1813, became a big figure in the salt industry. That's a business that never died out.
Right.
He ran salt works in the Shenandoah Valley, what later became West Virginia. It was all built on slave labor, of course. Samuel also wore the Confederate uniform during the war. He married Henry Ann Cabell, and their daughter Ruth Hairston Early, born in 1849, became a prominent figure in her own right.
Cool.
She was a writer, a member of the United Daughters of the Confederacy, and she was an historic preservationist based in Lynchburg. That city became the famous stronghold before the Civil War and the eventual home of Jubal Early in his later years.
Sure would. Old Jubal, he also had a younger brother named Robert. He was born in 1818, who, like his brothers, he fought for the Confederacy. But old Robert, he eventually left Virginia behind and settled in Missouri. As for old young Jubal himself, he grew up with the means to get an education. Good for him, huh? He first attended private schools in Franklin County, then advanced academies in Lynchburg and Danville. But his childhood took a hard turn when his mother died in 1832, an event that left a deep scar right in the bottom of his heart for the rest of his life.
Wow. I mean, to lose your mama back then at an early age was rough because daddy wasn't around. Daddy's working 15 to 20 hours a day.
I think losing your mom happened just as frequently as losing a kid in infancy.
That's true. Just a year later, it was 1833. His daddy and a congressman, Nathaniel Claiborne, secured him a spot at the United States Military Academy, and you guessed it, that's at West Point. They pointed to Jubal's particular talents in science and also mathematics. He made it. He passed probation. He earned the distinction of being the very first boy from Franklin County to ever attend West Point.
Good for him, huh?
Right.
He did indeed graduate in 1837 out of 50. He ranked 18th overall, 6th in engineering, which was considered a pretty prestigious track. His years at West Point weren't exactly without drama, though. At one point, his fellow cadet, Lewis Addison Armistead, he got so angry he smashed a mess plate over Early's head. That little incident ended Armistead's time at the academy, though, as we'll find out later, he would later rise to prominence in the Confederacy.
Oh, he would. He would. Early's class of 1837 is packed with future big names. For the Blue Coats, Joseph Hooker. He would later clash verbally with Early over the subject of slavery. Then you had John Sedgwick, William French on the fucking rebel side. You had old Braxton Bragg. Boo! You had Braxton Bragg, John C. Pemberton, Arnold Elzey, William H.T. Walker. All these fellas came out of the same class.
Hell of a class.
If we widen the circle a bit, West Point at the time was crawling with future generals. P.G.T. Beauregard, Richard Ewell, Edward Allegheny Johnson, Irvin McDowell, and of course, George Meade. So when you think about it, Jubal Early, well, he was forged in the same crucible as some of the biggest names of the American Civil War, North and South alike. I mean, it makes sense.
Well, I mean, yeah. What, we've covered one guy so far that didn't go to West Point, and that was Sickles.
Yeah.
Or I don't think Fremont went to there either.
It doesn't seem like it.
Remember, he was an explorer first. Well, after graduating, West Point, 1837, Jubal, he got his real first taste of Army life. He was commissioned as a second lieutenant in the 3rd U.S. Artillery, and then shipped off to Florida to go fight against the Indians. Except, well, he never actually fought against the Seminoles there.
Oh.
He later admitted he was disappointed because the closest he came to action was hearing, in his words, some bullets whistling among the trees.
Oh, wow.
But never anywhere near where he was. Not exactly the glory a young officer was hoping for. That's all they wanted to do was go out and kill some people, dude.
Right. Insanity.
Who's the real savages here?
Right. His older bro, Samuel, already been shaping Jubal's decisions, gave him some well-needed advice. He said, finish out the required 1 year service of obligation. Get the hell out of the Army, bro. Jubal, he said, all right. And he took that advice because in 1838, just after about a year, he resigned from the Army for the very first time.
For the first time.
And here's an interesting twist here, boys. While he was on his way home to Virginia, a notice of promotion caught up with him in Louisville. He later said that if it had arrived just a little earlier, he might have torn up his resignation and stayed in the service.
Huh?
Timing's everything. Damn.
Apparently, they were trying to promote his ass.
Oh,
He's a nah.
You dummy.
Back in Virginia, Early didn't waste no time. He studied law under a local attorney named Norborn M. Taliaferro. And by 1840, he was admitted to the Virginia bar. Not long after that, Franklin County voters elected him to represent them in the Virginia House of Delegates.
Cool.
He ran as a Whig, served one term from 1841 to 42, and he shared the post with another delegate, Henry Muse.
Ooh. Things changed when redistricting, of course, cut Franklin County's representation. Jubal lost his seat. Man who replaced him was none other than his old mentor, Norborn Taliaferro.
Oh, damn.
The same man who had trained him in the law. Taliaferro was a Democrat, and the voters seemed to prefer him. He not only took Jubal's place, but he went on to be reelected multiple times until 1854, eventually serving as a local judge.
Taliaferro was like, sorry, my boy.
I mean,
Well, anybody else, this would have been a career killer, but for Jubal, it wasn't. Instead, voters turned around and elected him Commonwealth's attorney, and that's the county prosecutor in these days. That's for both Franklin and nearby Floyd counties. So he was reelected in that position several times, and was until 1852 with just one interruption, and that's when he left to go fight in the Mexican-American War.
got to do that, right? Let's pause there. Jubal, he had flirted with the idea of soldiering long before Mexico. Back at West Point, he had actually thought about resigning his commission to go fight for Texas. He goes, I believe in their independence, and I want to fight for it. But his father and older brother Samuel, he said, nah, you don't want to do that. So he decided to listen to the old family, the old fam. By the time the Mexican-American War rolled around, he jumped at the chance.
He said, hell yeah, I'm going to fight for this.
And I'm my own man.
Well, despite the fact that Henry Clay, the most prominent Whig in the country and Jubal's own party leader, was against that very war, Early volunteered anyway.
Oh, well.
He received a commission as a major with the 1st Virginia Volunteers in 1847. The timing, though, wasn't in his favor again. His regiment got to Mexico so late, they missed the actual battlefield fighting altogether.
Oh, my goodness.
Jeez.
I mean, good for him. Instead, Early, he was put in charge of logistics. He served as Inspector General on the brigade staff, first under Colonel John Hamtramck, and then Lieutenant Colonel Thomas Randolph. Both are fellow West Pointers. He also spent some time helping govern the captured city of Monterey. He is known to like to brag about his leadership. He'd like to brag that under his leadership, order in Monterey was better than it has ever been before. He said people were well behaved. By the time his regiment mustered out at Fort Monroe, 1848, Early, well, he claimed that even the men who didn't like him at first, they come around. And they were later on to admit, well, we just misjudged him.
Yeah, sure, that's what he says.
Right.
While in Mexico, Early, he also met old Jeffy Davis,
Should have drowned him.
who at that point was commanding the Mississippi Volunteers. The two men exchanged compliments, something Jubal would remember later on. But the experience wasn't all positive. During the damp winter months in northern Mexico, Jubal, he suffered his first bouts of rheumatoid arthritis.
Oh.
And that would plague him for the rest of his life. Things got so bad he had to be sent home for 3 months to just recover. Damn.
Probably from holding that horse's rein so long all the time.
Could be.
Your hands so locked up constantly. When the war ended, Jubal returned to his law. But honestly, his legal career wasn't all that profitable. He had some wins, like an inheritance case in Lowndes County, Mississippi, but nothing that made him rich. He took on all kinds of cases, divorces, disputes over enslaved people. And though he handled cases involving slavery, he himself only ever owned one slave during his whole life. And it was probably a maid inside the house got treated like a family member.
Maybe. But in both the 1850 and 1860 censuses, Jubal owned neither real estate nor personal property.
Wow.
In 1850, he was living in a tavern,
I want a hotel room, huh?
which was actually common for lawyers at the time, probably because they're all going to places all the time. In 1860, he was still in the same boat, living in a hotel along with other lawyers and merchants. So while he came from a family with land and connections, old Jubal himself, he wasn't wealthy, not by a long shot.
Yeah, but he did what he had to do, and he probably never struggled, really, I bet. Chilling out at the bar all day and
Right.
go winning a stupid little case here that I'll give him his rent for the next couple weeks. During these years, he also lived with a woman named Julia McNeely. They had 4 children together. Jubal acknowledged all of them.
He said, hey,
Including
how you
his-
doing?
Right. Including a son named Jubal Early. Julia.
Why would he not acknowledge any of them? Just because
Right.
they weren't married?
Yeah. Julia would later marry another man in 1871, but the relationship shaped a big part of Jubal's personal life.
Oh. One of his biographers later described him as an unconventional and contrarian, yet wedded to stability and conservatism.
All right.
And that really fits the picture we're seeing of him here, as a man who didn't quite live by society's rules, but also wasn't a radical revolutionary either. He's
Right.
like, you know what?
He's like, I don't have to do all this, but I don't need a house and
A wife
and children.
Just because I have kids doesn't mean I got to marry her.
and then struggle my life away, farming or something. No, I can be by myself and fuck anybody in the world.
In 1850, Jubal, he ran for election again, this time to represent Franklin County at the Virginia Constitutional Convention, but he lost. Still, the voters weren't done with him. Just over a decade later, in 61, they sent him, alongside Peter Saunders, who just so happened to be his boarding house roommate. They said, you all go down to Virginia Secession Convention.
Oh. Wonder
What's going
happened
to happen there?
Well, this is where Jubal showed his stubborn streak. He went to that convention as a staunch Unionist. He argued hard that the rights of poor white Southerners who didn't own slaves deserve as much protection as the rights of wealthy slaveholders. They didn't see it that way. And he warned that secession would almost certainly bring on a war. Of course, his position made him unpopular. Some delegates even mocked him with the nickname, the Terrapin from Franklin.
Isn't a terrapin a turtle?
It is. But he didn't back down because he loved Tom Petty. He voted against secession in both rounds of voting. By the second vote, his fellow delegate Saunders had already left the convention. But Jubal, he said, fuck that. I'm standing firm. This is a union. I just went down and fought the Mexicans for you motherfuckers.
All right, well,
And the Indians down in Seminole. Even as the majority carried the decision for secession, he was like, man, I don't think we should.
well, but when Abraham Lincoln called for 75,000 volunteers to put down the rebellion, Jubal Early just about lost his mind. He had been a staunch Unionist before, but once Virginia voters ratified secession, his loyalty had shifted.
Well, it was like they love their state.
Well, like
Oh,
so
yeah.
many of his cousins and kin, he accepted a commission in the state militia.
Sweet Virginia, baby.
At first, he was appointed a brigadier general in the Virginia militia and sent to Lynchburg. There, he raised 3 regiments and personally commanded one of them. Just a couple months later, June 19th, 1861, he officially entered the Confederate service as a colonel, and he took command of the 24th Virginia Infantry. Among his men was his own young cousin, Jack Hairston, who had previously been expelled from Virginia Military Institute for the very serious offense of attending a tea party.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that really happened. Yeah, you weren't allowed to leave campus.
They're still pissed, man. It was only 40 years ago, bud. Or 80 years ago, bud.
Well, if I remember correctly, your first 2 years at West Point, you weren't allowed to leave campus.
That's true. Well, as we all know, the Battle of First Bull Run, July of 1861. Early's performance at a smaller class just beforehand, which was the skirmish at Blackburn's Ford, had impressed P.G.T. Beauregard, who was general. And at Bull Run, Early's men charged along Chin Ridge, helping to drive back the old Bluecoats in the rout that followed it. It was costly. His cousin, Captain Charles Fisher of the 6th North Carolina, murdered. But Early's bravery on the battlefield earned him a promotion. Not long after that very battle, he was bumped up to brigadier general.
From that point on, Jubal Early was in the thick of it.
Ooh,
And
thick
he
of
got what he
things.
just wanted, what he's always wanted.
Right.
He commanded troops in almost every major campaign in the Eastern Theater. The 7 Days battles, Second Battle of Bull Run, Antietam, Fredericksburg, Chancellorsville, Gettysburg, and later the brutal back-and-forth fighting of the Shenandoah Valley during the 1864 campaigns as well. And that's where he made his slimy little way up to Washington.
Early, he became one of Lee's most trusted commanders and also one of the most notorious. Lee affectionately called him Bad Old Man.
His bad old man.
Right. Nickname stuck because Jubal had a famously short temper, a tendency to swear like a sailor, and a habit of pushing back when given orders. But Lee valued him all the same. He said, you know this? All you guys just sit here and shut the hell up, and this motherfucker is going to tell me something. That's what I want. And nobody ever did that, except for Jubal Early. He knew that Early fought aggressively and could be trusted to handle an independent command when the situation demanded it.
Among the rank and file, Jubal, he was known as Old Jube, or sometimes even Old Jubilee.
Hey.
Despite his sharp edges, most of his soldiers actually used those nicknames with genuine affection. The old part wasn't just a jab at his personality, though. It was a nod to his stooped posture, a result of the rheumatoid arthritis he'd first developed back in Mexico years earlier. Yeah, he's all like, hunched over.
Well, even if the enlisted men liked him, his officers had a tougher time. Early was infamous for nitpicking, his tearing into subordinates over even the smallest mistakes. Hey, it's the Army, you don't like it? I won't tell you. And for doling out biting criticism at the slightest opportunity. He was just pissed. It wasn't just, hey man, get it together. No, hey, you stupid motherfucker, you son of a bitch.
Yeah.
Well, he could dish it out. He sure in hell couldn't take it, usually how it goes.
Makes sense.
He was almost blind to his own errors and reacted fiercely if anyone beneath him dared to criticize or even suggest a change. Oh, wow.
Who are you peasants?
Right.
Well, so now you got this picture of Jubal in the Civil War, fearless on the battlefield, trusted by Lee, beloved by his men for his fighting spirit, but also abrasive, combative, and nearly impossible to please if you work directly under him. By the spring of 1862, the Union launched his Peninsular Campaign. McClellan's grand plan to take Richmond, we all know how that went.
How'd it go?
And Jubal Early, he was right in the thick of that as well.
Oh, good for him, right? Battle of Williamsburg happened in May of 1861. Early made a critical mistake. Without taking the time for proper reconnaissance, he ordered his men into a full-on assault. They charged straight through a swamp and across a wheat field, heading right into two blue coat artillery redoubts. It was a disaster, as you all can imagine. The attack went nowhere. Cost was steep. His 22-year-old cousin, Jack Harrison, the same cousin who had joined, was murdered. 24th Virginia lost about 180 men, killed, wounded, or missing in that single fight. Early himself took a shoulder wound and had to head back home to Rocky Mount, Virginia to recover. I'm going home! Wee, all the way home.
But he didn't stay down for long. It was just a shoulder wound. By June 26th, first day of the 7 days battles, Early reported himself fit for duty. Trouble was, the brigade he'd led at Williamsburg essentially no longer existed. It had been shattered by casualties. The survivors were reassigned elsewhere after a reorganization. General Robert E. Lee, he told him flat out that in the middle of the campaign, there was no new command to give to him, bud. Sorry. You're just going to have to wait.
Like, hey, man, you got to wait for old Stonewall.
He said, don't worry. Somebody would inevitably die.
Right. We're in war. It could be you, so. Well, that chance came a few days later. Because on the 1st of July, at the Battle of Malvern Hill, the final clash of 7 days, Early was suddenly handed a new brigade. Brigadier General Arnold Elzey had been badly wounded at Gaines Mill, and Lee didn't trust the next in line, which was Colonel James Walker. So, even though Early still needed help just to get on horse because of his wound, he was put in charge. As it turned out, his new brigade didn't see much action, as usually never does. So whoever's in Jubal Early's brigade, you better be grateful if you really don't want to be at the war. There's a good chance you're not going to see anything. But the assignment marked his return to active command. I mean, you could have seen something, right?
For the rest of 1862, Jubal, he served under Stonewall in the 2nd Corps. His direct superior was Richard Ewell, a man he'd worked closely with again and again. Early earned a reputation for reliability that summer, though. At the Battle of Cedar Mountain, he got high marks for how he handled his men. And at Second Bow Run, his troops arrived just in time.
Oh, finally.
They reinforced A.P. Hill on Jackson's vulnerable left flank alongside Stony Ridge, shoring up the line at a critical moment. He's like, don't worry, we'll shore it up.
We're shored up. Mm-hmm. Then, well, came Antietam. That happened in September 1862. And as we all know, bloodiest war of the war. What? And as we all know, the bloodiest day of the war. Early suddenly found himself elevated to division command after his superior, Alexander Lawton, wounded. Lawton himself had only been in that role because Ewell was still recovering from losing a leg at 2nd Manassas.
Another lost leg guy, huh?
So by sheer bad luck of chain of command, Early was in charge of one of the war's most brutal battles. Good for him.
Well, Fredericksburg a few months later. Apparently that went good for him at Antietam. Fredericksburg a few months later, Early's division played a decisive role. Union General George Meade, he managed to break through a gap in Jackson's line, threatening the Confederate position. Early, he counterattacked at just the right time, closing the gap and pushing Meade's men back. General Lee was impressed, so much so that he made Early the permanent commander of what had been Ewell's division.
Oh, wow.
January 17th, 1863, Jubal, he was promoted to Major General as well.
Oh, yeah, look at you,
This guy.
Just as the war was about to fucking take a nosedive.
Right.
That very spring, the war moved into another bloody chapter.
Oh.
Chancellorsville. After Chancellorsville, it was all over. Everybody says Gettysburg and all that, but I think after Chancellorsville, finito. 1st of May, 1863, Lee handed nearly 9,000 men to Early and told him to hold Fredericksburg at all costs, motherfucker. The Union sent 4 whole divisions under John Sedgwick to pry him out. Early and his men held off as long as they could, effectively pinning Sedgwick down while Lee and Jackson executed their famous flanking attack against the rest of the Union Army to the west. Okay. So on the 3rd of May, Sedgwick finally launched a full assault. This has happened on Mary's Height. Early couldn't hold on forever, and the Union troops finally drove them back. That fight earned the nickname the Second Battle of Fredericksburg.
And if the battle itself wasn't enough drama, Early, he managed to stir up a different kind of fight afterwards. He got in a newspaper war with Brigadier General William Barksdale of Mississippi, who had commanded under Lafayette, McLaws, and Longstreet's First Corps.
Right.
Barksdale, a former newspaperman and congressman, he wasn't about to let Early have the last word. The two traded public barbs until Lee himself finally had to step in and tell them both, "Shut the fuck up!"
Right. Holy shit, boys.
What are you doing, you pussies?
Jeez, oh, Peter, right?
Newspapers?
Right.
It's,
Well, the real...
that's like a Twitter war.
Right. Son of a bitch. Well, the real blow of that campaign wasn't a matter of pride or position. It was the death of Stonewall Jackson. The very night of the 2nd of May, Jackson accidentally shot by his own sentries. He died on the 10th of May. In the aftermath, Richard Ewell, who had recovered from his leg amputation, took over command of the 2nd Corps. Uber Early, and Early, now a major general with a growing reputation, he would play a crucial role under him in the campaigns to come.
And by the summer of 1863, when Lee launched his Gettysburg campaign, Jubal was still in charge of a division under Ewell, and Early's men made a big splash right out the gate. At the Second Battle of Winchester, mid-June, they smashed through Union defenders, captured thousands of prisoners, and basically cleared the Shenandoah Valley so Lee's army could march north without any trouble. That old Shenandoah Valley hated the Union, I'm telling you.
From there on, Early led this division east, over South Mountain and in Pennsylvania. Along the very way, they scooped up supplies, horses, and in Early's case, made some pretty harsh threats. He captured Gettysburg itself on June 26. He demanded a ransom from the town. Nobody paid, but he warned that anyone caught hiding a fugitive slave would see their home burned to the ground.
Then he left, and 2 days later, he ended up in York, Pennsylvania, where his demands actually worked this time, at least partly. The town handed over $28,000 in cash along with supplies, making York the largest northern town to fall to Confederate troops during the entire war.
Oh, shit.
And Early didn't stop there. He burned down an iron foundry outside Gettysburg owned by abolitionist Congressman Thaddeus Stevens, sending a very pointed message.
Ooh,
You
I
want to
bet you
be
that-
on their side? Well, fuck your shit up.
I bet you that pissed him off. And by the 28th of June, some of his troops had reached the Susquehanna River, the farthest east any organized Confederate force has ever gotten in Pennsylvania. Run didn't last long, though, because on the 30th of June, Early was recalled to join the main Confederate army as Lee prepared for the battle that was about to define the entire war. It wasn't just supplies that Early's men took in Pennsylvania. They rounded up anyone they believed to be an escaped slave. And in the chaos, that meant seizing free black Pennsylvanians as well. More than 500 people were kidnapped in Fort South, one of the darkest legacies of that very campaign.
Hey, man, got to do what you got to do.
Right.
When the old Battle of Gettysburg finally broke out July 1st, Early's division came in from the northeast. His men, they hit Union General Francis Barlow's division hard, drove them back with heavy losses, and pushed Union troops through the streets of Gettysburg itself, capturing many along the way. Then came one of the campaign's controversies. Early, he wanted to storm East Cemetery Hill immediately, where the Union had regrouped. Ewell, he said no. By the time they were allowed to attack the next day, Union reinforcements had arrived, and Early's brigades were thrown back with bloody losses. On the third day, part of his force was sent to attack Culp's Hill, which we all know was another failure for the Confederates.
My goodness. After Gettysburg, Early's division covered the Confederate retreat back south. They spent the winter of 1863 and 1864 in Shenandoah Valley. And at that very time, Early, he often filled in for Ewell when illness forced him out of command. Lee thought highly of Early's aggressiveness, and on 31st of May, 1864, Jefferson Davis promoted him to temporary lieutenant general at Lee's request. Look at that. Good for him. The war's over anyway.
Well, right. Early soon proved he can handle that responsibility. At the Battle of the Wilderness, he fought well. Though he lost another cousin in the fighting. Stop battling with your cousins, bro.
Right.
He briefly commanded A.P. Hill's corps when Hill fell sick. And at Spotsylvania Courthouse, he held the right flank of the line known as the Mule Shoe. When Hill returned, Lee made a change. He was frustrated with Ewell's shaky performance. So he sent Ewell to defend Richmond and put Early in command of the Second Corps.
Oh.
Early led that corps at Cold Harbor as well.
Oh. Wow.
Didn't matter, bud.
Right. Not long after that, a new threat arose. Union General David Hunter was cutting through the Shenandoah Valley, and he was cutting through hard. He was burning as he went, including the Virginia Military Institute. Right. Including the Virginia Military Institute at Lexington.
No.
The Valley was the Confederacy's breadbasket. And Lee couldn't afford to lose that. So he sent Early with about 8,000 men to stop Hunter and defend the critical rail hub at Lynchburg. You son of a bitch, you do what you got to do.
Well, Early arrived to find help from John Breckinridge, Arnold Elzey, a batch of recovering Confederates, and even the cadets of VMI. Yeah, do something. Townspeople pitched in, too. One of them, Narcissa Owen, the wife of the Virginia and Tennessee Railroad president, she personally helped organize relief. Early, he didn't have numbers on his side, but he pulled off a clever bluff. He ran trains in and out of town to make it look like fresh reinforcements were pouring in, and Hunter fell for it. Convinced he was outnumbered 1.5 million to 20,000,
Right.
Hunter pulled back towards West Virginia. The Confederates pursued, but their cavalry couldn't keep up. Still, Early had saved Lynchburg without a major battle, and he earned a reputation as the man Lee could send in when the stakes were high.
Look at that.
If Jackson was his right arm, then Early was his left arm.
Right. During the summer of 1864, Robert E. Lee, he was in a tough spot. Grant was hammering away at Petersburg. Sherman was tearing through the South. And the old rebels, they were running out of time, men, and supplies. So Lee, he said, Early, you're gruff, you're irritable, but you're still one of the most trusted commanders that I have. And he gave him a temporary promotion to lieutenant general, as we all said. Your mission, he said? Well, take command of the Army of the Valley and cause chaos.
I don't care what you do.
Right. We need some shit done. This meant sweeping Union forces out of the Shenandoah Valley, gathering more supplies, and if all the stars align, threaten Washington, D.C. itself. The hope was that a bold move north might force Grant to ease the pressure off of Petersburg and Richmond. He thought that was going to happen.
Early started off by trying to capture Franz Sigel's small force at Maryland Heights near Harper's Ferry. That stalled him for a few days, and then his men spent July 4th through the 6th feasting upon captured Union supplies. Not exactly a lightning-fast campaign, which you're supposed to be doing, but
Right. Holy shit.
those delays cost him precious time, because when he finally pushed towards Washington, which had been nearly defenseless at this moment, they had a chance to reinforce by this time. They knew he was coming.
You dummy. Jeez. On the way, Early stopped to extort money from towns like Hagerstown, Fredericks, which is in Maryland. Frederick ended up paying $200,000 just to avoid being looted.
Damn.
By the time Early's men reached the outskirts of Washington, they were too late to take advantage of his weakness. Well, but still, the threat was real enough that President Lincoln himself came out to Fort Stevens and watched the fighting. Standing right up on the parapet under enemy fire. Early later quipped, "We didn't take Washington, but we scared the hell out of Abe Lincoln."
Did ya? I don't think you did. After skirmishes at Fort Stevens and Fort DeRussy, Early he pulled back across the Potomac with his loot, heading for the Shenandoah. At Kernstown, July 24th, he beat George Crook's Union Army, and for a while it looked like he might hold control of the valley. Its cavalry raided deep into Maryland and Pennsylvania, demanding ransoms from towns and burning anything that didn't pay.
Oh, wow.
Most notoriously, July 30th, his cavalry torched Chambersburg, Pennsylvania, more than 500 buildings up in flames. They claimed it was retaliation for the Union burning of the VMI and some Southern homes. But even Confederate officers admitted McCausland's men looted the place with shocking brutality as well.
Oh, son of a bitch, you idiots. Union cavalry under William Averell chased the raiders back across the Potomac and dealt them a severe defeat at Moorfield in early August. That was the beginning of the end. Grant decided Early had to be crushed, and he sent Philip Sheridan, along with overwhelming numbers. He said, "Sheridan, you do what Lee wanted Early to do."
Right.
And Sheridan said, "Yeah, sure.
I'll do it." Straight through the late summer and fall, Sheridan's army battered Early in battle after battle. Winchester, Fisher's Hill, then Cedar Creek. At Cedar Creek in October, Early actually pulled off a surprise attack, routing most of Sheridan's army in the morning. But his hungry, exhausted men broke ranks to plunder the Union camp.
Oh, son of a bitch.
That pause gave Sheridan time to rally and counterattack. By the afternoon, Early's great victory had flipped into a crushing defeat. Even his own officers like John Gordon later blamed Early's hesitation for the disaster.
Oh, wow. Wow. From there, the campaign unraveled. Sheridan burned his way through the valley, destroying its ability to supply Lee's army at all. Early's forces dwindled away. His reputation with the men collapsed, and even Virginia's former governor declared him no longer a safe commander.
Uh-oh.
And by November of 1864, Lee had recalled most of the Second Corps back to Petersburg, leaving Early with scraps of an army. He's like, "I want all these guys, but Early, you stay, you son of a bitch." You stay.
Final humiliation for Early came at Waynesboro in March of 1865. Sheridan's men nearly annihilated his little force, capturing most of his men and supplies. Early barely escaped with his life, riding off with just a handful of staff officers. Lee, loyal as ever, tried to soften the blow in a letter, but the truth was clear. Early's usefulness had ended. He was relieved of command and his Confederate career over.
Valley Campaign had started with the bold hope of saving Richmond and the Confederate itself. But in the end, it only drained Confederate strength and sealed the Valley's fate, and with it, much of the South's fate. Lee surrendered at Appomattox in April of 1865. Early wasn't ready to call it quits. Instead of laying down his arms, he bolted for Texas on horseback, hoping to find some last Confederate force still holding on. But there wasn't one. From Texas, he slipped into Mexico, then on to Cuba, and he finally wound up in Canada.
Okay.
And we went all the way to and stepping foot in America again.
Well, this was the same guy who once called himself a Unionist before the war. But after Appomattox, he insisted he could never live under what he called the Yankee government. So in Toronto, with some financial help from family, he started writing. In 1866, he published a memoir of the last year of the War for Independence in the Confederate States of America. Long title. Thanks for somebody finally acknowledging this. But it was actually the very first book by a Confederate major general about the war.
Oh, shit.
The focus was his Valley Campaign, and from then on, he dedicated his life to defending his choices and shaping the story of the war into what later became known as the Lost Cause Movement.
Yep. Sure now did. President Andrew Johnson pardoned most Confederate leaders in 1869, even Jubal Early. But Early was almost proud to call himself an unrestricted rebel. He refused reconciliation. He refused to reconcile. He dressed only in Confederate gray suits, and eventually moved back to Lynchburg to practice law. But life after the war wasn't kind. His daddy died in 1870. The woman who was the mother of his 4 children, who he had never married someone else. Early himself lived out the rest of his years plagued by illness, poverty, and constant reliance on family, friends. to even survive another day.
Even so, he kept making speeches and writing, insisting on his version of events. He leaned heavily on Robert E. Lee's words. 1872, on the anniversary of Lee's death, Early quoted 2 private letters where Lee said the Confederacy had fought bravely against overwhelming odds and that the truth would only be understood by anybody later. That became fuel for Early's lifelong defense of the South's fight.
Oh.
Just give it up, bud.
Well, this is where things take a darker turn, though. In his later years, Early leaned hard into white supremacy.
Of course.
In his memoirs, he argued that slavery had civilized African Americans. He called them naturally inferior. And he also claimed that mixing races went against God's plan. It wasn't just ugly racism. It was the backbone of how he justified both the Confederacy and the lost cause. He's just a dirty old man. Jeez. At the very same time, Early lashed out at other Confederates who didn't fall in line with his version. He especially hated James Longstreet, blaming him for Gettysburg and condemning him for working with the Republicans and black Americans after the war. Move on, bud.
Right.
He never forgave Grant either. He sneered at him as nothing more than a butcher.
Oh, shut up. Despite his bitterness, Early rose to prominence in post-war Southern circles. Of course he would. He became president of the Southern Historical Society, headed the Lee Monument Association, and helped organize the Association of the Army of Northern Virginia.
Oh, wow.
He even teamed up with PGD Beauregard to make money off the Louisiana lottery, which at that time was notoriously corrupt.
Oh, wow.
He remained close to Jefferson Davis, though Varina Davis, Jefferson's wife, wasn't exactly charmed. She described Early as a crabby bachelor with a squeaky, high-pitched voice.
Oh. Wow. Son of a bitch.
So in the end, his legacy wasn't just on the battlefield. It was in the way he tried to shape how future generations remembered the Confederacy.
Yeah.
Cling to the lost cause, refusing reconciliation, and never letting go of his defiance. Just give it up.
Right.
You could have been a big successful person after the war if you weren't such a fucking
piece of shit of a human. Another piece of shit. Holy shit. We got a couple good ones before that.
Very few.
Oh my. Jubal Early's story came to a rather unglamorous end. February 15th, day after Valentine's Day, he just woke up after a stupor of a night.
Drunken stupor, thinking of his now remarried woman.
He woke up, hungover as hell, tripped, and fell down the granite steps of the post office in Lynchburg. The doctors checked him over. No broken bones, no fractures, but he was in pain. He was confused.
Busted his head.
And he never really bounced back. Yeah, he got a concussion. A couple weeks later, 2nd of March, he passed away quietly at home. His brain was swollen.
Probably. Had a internal bleeding or some shit.
Holding the hand of his friend, United States Senator John Warwick Daniel.
Jeez.
Wow.
At the time, newspapers speculated he was worth somewhere between $200,000 and $300,000, though his death certificate never listed an exact cause of death.
Okay.
Virginia gave him a full Confederate send-off. Flags at half-mast over the state capitol. Cannons firing 36 booming shots at 5-minute intervals. It took forever. And a funeral procession that included cadets from VMI, 300 Confederate veterans, and local militia. His casket was draped in a Confederate flag. Oh. And even a riderless horse with reverse stirrups followed behind, which is a military tradition symbolizing a fallen commander.
No shit. Wow, the funeral itself was short, but dramatic. Reverend T.M. Carson, he had fought in Early's Valley Campaign, spoke of the countless forces of the enemy they had faced together. After taps were played, and one of his followers kissed him farewell, Early was laid to rest at Spring Hill Cemetery in Lynchburg, Virginia. He was buried alongside distant relatives.
All of them whom he got killed in the war.
Men who had fallen in the war, as well as Confederate generals Thomas Munford and James Deering.
All right. Well, even after his death, Early's shadow lingered. His papers are scattered across institutions like the Library of Congress, the Virginia Historical Society, and the Library of Virginia. And the lost cause mythology he'd worked so hard to promote didn't die with him either.
Oh.
It carried on through groups like the United Confederate Veterans, the United Daughters of the Confederacy, and even through his own niece, Ruth Hairston Early. 2 of his works were published posthumously. Autobiographical sketch and narrative of the war between the states in 1912, and The Heritage of the South in 1915, which doubled down on his defense of slavery. Still in 1915, guys? Jeez. For decades afterwards, historians, most famously Douglas Southall Freeman, who grew up in Lynchburg and even remembered neighbors pointing out Early as a sort of grumbling bogeyman.
Oh.
Boogeyman? He picked up elements of the lost cause to help Southerners cope with the massive upheaval of Reconstruction. God, guys, give it up.
Right.
That'd have been some of the most miserable people back then.
Right. Oh, wow. But more modern historians like Gary Gallagher, they point out that Early knew exactly what he was doing. He understood the fight for memory, the battle to define how the Civil War would be remembered, and, in Gallagher's words, enjoyed more success than he probably imagined possible. Others, like sociologist James Lowen, he argued that his rhetoric did real damage, feeding racial hatred that lasted long beyond his lifetime. And so, to put it all into one little basket, Jubal Early died as he had lived, stubborn, controversial, and determined to frame the Civil War story on his own terms. Some ways he succeeded, other ways people laughed. But he left behind a legacy of bitterness and distortion that we're still untangling today, because guess what?
We are sure. We just did a whole episode on the stubborn, controversial bastard that he is.
Dirty fucking...
Dude, he could have been a good general.
Could have been a good person.
Could have been well, yeah, but he could have been a good general and remembered good if he did good after the war and not been a fucking piece of trash, dude. Wow, I'm surprised he didn't hook up with Nathan Bedford Forrest and fucking do the Klan shit.
You ain't kidding. Maybe they did.
Shit.
Maybe they did.
Wow, that's Jubal Early.
Yeah, it's too bad.
Well, no fort named after him.
Right.
Yeah, that's him. As usual, we'll be back next week for fun fact. We did a George Thomas episode a few weeks ago, but let's just say technical difficulties prevented it from even recording, so maybe we'll just wrap up him again and get him out of the way since he's been staring at us right there for 3 weeks. So probably George Thomas next week, and then keep rolling with more Behind the Battle stuff. So subscribe, share with your friends, leave us a comment, review, and we'll see you next week on Battles of the American Civil War. Behind the Battles, we are the Month of Michigan.
Bang and dang.